All right, so I will call the meeting to order. I'm Marjorie Winters, and this is a meeting of the Simsbury Conservation Commission and Inland Wetlands Regulatory Agency. And we will do roll call. We have, again, I'm Marjorie Winters. We have Jason Levy, Andrew Bade, Don Eaton, and Charlie Halderman on commission. And let's see, Charlie, since we have openings, would you care to sit? I was
Sure.
repeated tonight. I get that right off the bat before we do anything. All right, and the new item, new business. We have, anyone have any new business that they want to bring up?
Madam Chair, so we did send out an amended agenda,
Okay.
and perhaps you've not received it yet, but we should have sent it. I'm going to make one excuse tonight. So the planning department is undergoing a little bit of COVID protocol this week. So I'm here by myself this week because of some close contacts among other folks in the department. So we did try to send this out, but there is so in your Dropbox, in fact, I'll just bring it up. So it's receipt of a new application and determination of significance. It's a 72 King Philip Road, 5 Tower Run. It's an application for a septic and leach field in an upland review area. Let me just show you on the Dropbox the site plan. Share screen. And share. Can you see that?
Yes.
So it looks, so we've got flagged wetlands in this location here of my cursor. We've got an existing structure, and this structure received an inland wetlands permit several years ago for a pool, and so the applicant is not interested in constructing that pool. I think there's new ownership. And then is interested in constructing the septic field here. It's about 45 feet from the regulated area. So I would ask you to make a determination of significance, and then we can schedule it appropriately. It seems to me it probably meets the conditions for non-significant activity, and I would recommend putting it on your June 7th meeting for action.
George, my name is Jim Cassidy. I'm the site engineer for this. Steve McClarty and Brendan McClarty are also on. They're the owner and builder. Can I add a couple things as to why we're actually looking to do this?
I would ask that the chairwoman for that obligation, Madam Chair. Marjorie.
What? I think she might have dropped off.
Yeah, it looks like we're missing Marjorie.
Yeah.
Well, without objection, other members of the commission?
Jason, I think you're ranking right now, so
Yeah.
you can make the distinction.
Yeah, I think, do you need a motion to put it on our next meeting's agenda, or?
Yeah, so again, I'm getting familiar with how you guys operate. So my experience would be to make a recommendation that you would find that it's not a significant activity and place it on your next agenda. And the applicant has asked to say a word as well.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought that was what was on the table.
Okay,
saying a word.
Yeah, no, it's fine if the applicant speaks.
Okay. So again, for the record, my name is Jim Cassidy. I'm a professional engineer and principal with the firm of Halsey, Pearson and Cassidy. I've been helping out Mr. McClarty's on the development of the house. This is an existing lot that was approved back in 2014. As mentioned, we did receive a permit to start construction of the actual house. And going out there, and I did some soil testing on the property. There was an area outside the upland review area that was originally shown for the septic system. It technically meets the requirements of the state health code to put a system in. But when I actually went out and did soil testing, I guess wasn't really satisfied with the soils. I thought there could be a better place to put a septic on this property. We did some additional soil testing. Ultimately, we found an area where it was mentioned there was a pool previously proposed, and the soil was a lot better. I was concerned about the longevity of the system in the regional location, so I had made the recommendation that we try to move it. It is within the 100-foot review line from the wetlands. You'll also notice there's a conservation easement line on this map. It is outside that conservation easement that was approved as part of the original subdivision. So this is an area that was proposed to be disturbed. The soils, again, I think in that area were a lot better, and the overall length and expectancy of the system will be a lot better in that area. As mentioned, it will be at least 50 feet away from the wetlands, so it meets all the state health code requirements. But it was my recommendation highly to move the system to ensure it survives a long period of time. So that's the purpose of bringing this application forward to you. I see it as my opinion is an insignificant activity. It was previously approved for disturbance for a pool. And again, in the overall scheme of things, I think you would find the system in this area is going to last a lot longer than where originally was proposed as part of the subdivision plan.
Thank you.
I see Marjorie's back.
Sorry, I clicked myself off. It was very clever. Sorry.
So as I said, as I said earlier, I don't know how you normally do stuff like this, but I would recommend, finding of non-significant activity and scheduling it on your June 7th meeting for action, review and action.
I think that's a reasonable thing. Do we need to make a motion for that, or is it just automatic that it goes on?
Well, I think you really do need to make a motion with the finding
Okay.
of a non-significant activity. With that, I'll place it on that agenda.
Okay.
I'll motion that we find that it is not a significant activity and that we add it to our, I believe, June 7th agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So are we up to old business? I've lost track.
We are on old business.
Sorry about that.
You are.
I was just minimizing something and then I was gone. Old business, none. And then general commission business, minutes from April 19th. I did notice that James Morrison's name was still on the, was marked as absent, but I think he has resigned.
Okay, we'll make that change.
All right. Does anyone else have any additions or changes to the minutes?
If James is resigned, does that mean that there's no vice chair?
No, I
Right
think
now?
Jason, is. I think we had elections.
Okay, good. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, but you're right. Yeah. So does anyone have any other changes or additions? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. And then we have agent actions.
Madam Chair, how do you usually receive agent actions? That would be helpful to me since I haven't worked with you before. So they're in your packet and they're in the Dropbox. So just let me know what you want to know.
So if you would just, go through each one and tell them what it was and what you just,
Absolutely. So application 2204, 37 Longview Drive was two small air conditioning condensers right at the base of the house, a significant distance away from the wetland watercourse. So fairly simple. Springbrook Lane is a garage addition. It's a 420 square foot garage. They also had gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals for side yard variances, but that location is about 96 feet from a watercourse brook. So it's fairly significant. And finally, 24 Musket Trail is a 320 square foot deck addition or replacement, actually.
And that was just post tolls and,
Post holes and exactly, yeah, that's exactly it.
okay, does anyone have any questions about any of the actions?
No, I looked through it. It seemed very reasonable.
I mean, those are exactly the type of projects that we, hope that the agent will take care of, and we don't need to bring them up.
Sure, but I do want to make it clear that I do want you to let me know and let staff know that it's kind of your job to say, hey, George, that's a little big so please, as I feel this commission out and understand you a little bit better, don't be afraid. I mean, this is your job. So if there is something that you want to review that I perhaps even had already approved, it's your duty and right to say, how about we just put that on the agenda for review?
Okay. Yeah, the only one I can see there is sort of is the garage construction, but it's fine. All right. Any correspondence?
I didn't send out any correspondence unless you sent.
Good. And does anyone have any correspondence they received that they thought we should bring to the conservation? All right. So we're on to the conservation business. I know at our last meeting we had several things that we talked about. And I did send George a variety of things. One of them was, let me see if I can get to the page without closing myself out. We looked at the agricultural land use policy practices that we're hoping that the leasees or the leaser will abide by when they lease some land from the town. I think this has or will be going to the Board of Selectmen. But if it's a working document, so if this is something that the Open Space Committee put together to improve our soil land. Originally, we had a 1-year lease, and with a 1-year lease, the farmers really just can't make any improvements to the soil. So it is now a 5 years rolling lease with these guidelines. So it will be.
I'm sharing my screen, Marty.
Thank you. That makes
so everybody knows what we're talking about.
And that way I don't have to close
It's just a
myself
little
out.
bit easier. I mean, it's not. This document is only a 3-pager, and it's quite nicely highlighted by category and best practice.
But if you come across, these were taken from, I think there were 2 land use practice guidelines for, I think it was one was the town of Manchester, and I can't remember the other one. But they had some really good advice for managing the town land for agriculture. And so it was really just putting these 2 together and then doing a little tweaking. But if anyone, comes across in their reading of other things that we can add to it, it's one of those things that can be amended, for future go-rounds. So if you come across anything about, agricultural policies that you think would be, good to include, let me know. And we can take it to the Open Space Committee, or we can make a recommendation as a commission to the Open Space, and we can see if we can get it in there. But did anyone have a chance to read through? Yeah,
I'll be quiet.
that's right.
Under pest control, just reading through it, I don't know if it's possible to add something in there about specifying like integrated pest management, which is probably under best agricultural practices. It's just, growing without any sort of application of material is probably not realistic, but the farmers who practice integrated pest management, they really use a lot less.
You're right. It should be in there.
So if I don't know exactly how we'd want to phrase that, but encouraging that.
Well,
I think most of the farmers are doing it anyways, but it's also saves them money.
It does. It's good. I'm surprised we left that one out. I'm not sure whether it's in any of the other. It does come under the best management practice, but it should be spelled out. You're absolutely right. So I will bring that up at the open space and see if we can't tuck that in under pest control.
Thank you.
It also comes under the that's under there. Thank you. That's an obvious one that we left out.
My previous job has me thinking about that stuff still. So
Excellent.
I got to talk to a lot of farmers, so I learned a lot.
So we can get, even if it's not for this, but we can certainly get it into the, I think perhaps for next year.
Okay.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Jason.
You're welcome.
So,
Under the cropland soil testing, where I can't really see the bottom of that paragraph, where do the results go?
that was one of the things that we were trying to, that's still being worked on. The, in some towns, they have a agricultural committee, agricultural lands committee. And it was something that I don't know whether we want to do it, we might want to do it under conservation. I mean, right now it's going to be open space, but it could easily, something that could easily come to us. When the leases come up, they are shared with the open space committee, but it's all still kind of in, that's a very good question. Who sees those results?
Well, I mean, if you're asking for them to be done,
Yes.
then there has to be some use of the information.
Yes.
And so, what is that?
Good point.
I mean, it seems to me that what you're getting towards, and I didn't see it in this when I did my first quick reading, but it sounds like, you're providing guidelines, but you would like to have some reporting on this.
Yep.
Which is going out as a function of, how does this work? If you're using the soil testing or the pest control things, you would like to have an idea at least the open space committee or somebody, whether this stuff is working or needs to change for like another lease.
You're absolutely right. So I know we brought that up. I don't think it had been resolved as to who wanted it. Is there any interest for the Conservation Commission to have that? I'm not sure if the open space wants it or not.
I'd be interested in seeing it.
Well, I agree. I actually think they'd be very interested in seeing it, but I think if your larger goal has been to impact how you will do leases and how you're doing land management,
Mhm.
then there has to be a receiving end on the town side
It does.
to use that knowledge.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily in our wheelhouse of what we're going to impact.
And also not just where it goes, but what do you do about it? It says,
Absolutely.
it tests to include calcium. Well, what about calcium? What's high, what's low? There are no thresholds here. So
No, it would be dependent on the crop that was grown. Some things don't need as much, but just to give an idea of what's there, the main thing that we're really interested in is that organic matter. And that's the key one, because a lot of our soils are especially some of our agricultural soils are terribly low in them. And it's the getting those up, the test whether it's calcium, magnesium, phosphate, or potassium, those would be, and nitrogen would be in there too, but to see what they need for the crops and what they want to apply. So and they'll get back from the nutrient analysis. They'll get that back if they usually say what they're going to be growing, and the lab usually says what the levels should be for that particular plant. But you're absolutely right about what we're looking for is what are the trends in the soil? Are they going up? Are they going down? And for those individual soils, and then we can have them reviewed. But again, who's reviewing?
And what's your management plan? The reason you're doing this is because you want to have a management plan for this area.
Yeah.
So you really aren't that interested in all these different pieces. You're interested in how well the soil is being utilized and how it's improving over time.
Yeah.
You're using these as surrogates to give you that information.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that organic matter.
Right, but again, that's the surrogate for how well you matching it being used.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But again, it goes to who's going to be looking at this data.
Right. So if you have to answer that first.
Yeah, and for the longest time, the town was using the town engineer to approve or not the leases for the farms. So this is going towards that. But these are two very good points. We'll include the integrated pest management and And, I'll go back to because originally in the other ones, they did set up or suggest setting up an agricultural review team that would be aware of it. So we can go back and check that out again. Because right now it's sort of not falling any particular place.
Right. So so that's neither. Yeah, we have to try to fix that, right? But it's not mission critical.
No.
No, we just got to try to get that under control.
Yeah. So we'll work on that. All right. All right. So those are excellent points. I'll take them back to open space, and see what we can do, and I'll report back.
Mhm.
All right. So the other one was the management of the meadows. Are we going to do that one, or what's the next one up? Oh, you got the native plants up. Do you, or do I have it? I've got it up.
You're on mute, George.
You have it up, but I now have the mowing practices up.
Okay, good.
How about we do that?
All right. So let's do the mowing practices.
All right, hang on. A lot of moving parts here.
All right. This is something we're working on in open space. Right now the open space is managed by some of them's Park and Rec, and they mow them when they have people available to mow them, which is perfectly fine. However, management of some of our wild areas is dependent on what we're managing it for. So one of the things we've had discussions at open space is the difference between managing for pollinators and the managing for grassland birds. And some of the recommendations for grassland birds is that you need a certain shape and size of a field to be effective grassland bird habitat. And those ones should not be mowed during the breeding season, but they should be mowed in late August after the breeding has completed. However, when you mow in late August for a pollinator garden, it tends to knock off all the seed heads, and it is conducive for the growth of grass, but it's not conducive for the growth of forbs, which are the pollinator plants. So the suggestion is to find to identify which parcels of property in town would be good for grassland bird habitat, and to now manage it for that. And some of the fields are mowed annually, which is a little bit it's unnecessary. For the pollinator gardens or meadows, you can mow every other year or every third year. You can mow half of the field and mow the other half the next year, but it's a matter of identifying which field is going to be mowed what year, and so these are the sorts of things that we're looking at. I was able to find how to establish a meadow, how to maintain a meadow. There's certain areas in town that could be enhanced as meadow habitat. We do a lot of mowing of grass in town in some areas that we don't really need. I've been in conversation with Orlando Casio and Brian Johnson over at the farms. There are a lot of grassy areas that they are now starting to not mow. And we're going to see how that goes, and if we can enhance them as a meadow, or even just leave them as tall grass. A lot of insects like that. So that's the sort of thing we're working on. But if anyone can come up with anything else that should be added to it, or any questions about it, new eyes are always good.
So it seems to me like you've got a good distinction between the two.
Yes,
You're going sooner or later going to come down to a map, and then you're going to have to come up with an evaluation strategy.
that's it.
So again, who's going to do that?
That's
I suspect it goes in with the other group as well, the agricultural group.
well, they're not going to look at it, but it will have to be a subgroup to look at it. We do have a working group at the open space, and we're looking at something and working with town staff to identify. We're going to be going. This hasn't been on the front burner of the agenda for open space yet, but we're hoping to move it up as we check off various things, because a lot of things we just haven't had any plans for. land use plans for. So we're looking to move this one up. And when we do, we'll form a subcommittee to work with town to look at the maps to identify which habitat is the best, and perhaps get NRCS or someone else in Audubon or someone else to look at the maps with us to properly identify them. And then once we identify them, then it becomes pretty easy. The town, you can identify this one will be mowed this, in even years, this one will be mowed in odd years, this will be mowed, the mowing strategy becomes a little clearer.
Well, yeah, actually, that wasn't the part I was worried about, Marjorie. I think those first two parts are easily done. The question I was thinking about is who's going to evaluate the viability of this over a couple of years?
Well, that's what it means. Viability of what?
Well, like someone's going to make a distinction on which ones to mow where. You're going to follow that for a year or two or whatever, and then someone has to evaluate whether you're getting it right or wrong, or is there tweaks you need to make to it.
I think that's why I was saying that, we'll have a working committee working with the town to identify, based on criteria that we can get from Audubon or NRCS to look for the habitat, get the habitat criteria for each of the meadows that we do have, because we can identify the meadows that do require mowing, and then we can bring in, people with more expertise than we have, and then go from there. Identify the fields and identify which habitat would be good for which. So that's another subcommittee work.
Yeah, well, it's probably going to be quite a bit of subcommittee work for the Open Space Committee. But so it sounds to me like what you're saying is that when you set up the criteria for these things in the beginning, you're going to use those same criteria and those same guidelines for your assessment.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have to think about how you're going to gather that data and utilize that.
Well, most of it's, we already have fields that are mowed. What we will do is look at it's based on the pollinator habitat doesn't need, that doesn't have many size restrictions. The grassland bird habitat does. So it'll be based on looking at the map and whether or not each meadow fits the criteria for grassland bird habitat.
Right, but that's a size criteria only. I thought you were going to try
size
to do
and
this.
shape. Size and shape.
But I thought you were going to, as you're doing this, try to evaluate how it's actually working for the pollinators and the birds, etc. So you're telling me the only criteria is going to be size and shape for the selection, and that's
for the mowing. Yeah, for whether or not it would be grassland versus habitat. Now, once the pollinator habitat is, we've established which is going to be pollinator habitat. Later on, then there could be enhancement of that. I mean, there could be reseeding, there could be all sorts of other things to enhance that. But the main thing is, right now, everything's getting mowed, and it's not necessarily for the benefit of the birds or the pollinators. It's just getting mowed when it's convenient for the town. So this would be the first attempt to establish a mowing practice that would be conducive to either habitat, birds or pollinators. So, and it would have to be, initially it would be based on the size. So after we do if you do the mowing for the grasslands, if you do them correctly, it will remain a grassland, more of a grassland habitat, and the other one will evolve into more of a forb habitat. So it will sort of go that way on its own. But then later on, there can be evaluation of that. But right now, we don't have, it's neither fish nor fowl. So, and we have no policy whatsoever. So this is an attempt to get that policy, but I agree with you. Eventually it would need evaluation. But the first thing is to see which areas we're thinking of establishing. What are the goals for each of the meadows?
Okay.
And that would be size criteria. And we'll get the experts in from Audubon and NRCS, because they'll be able to give us better feel for the meadows we have. So if anyone comes up with anything else they'd like to add to this, that would be great, because that will be discussed by the, hopefully it'll be on the docket for NRCS. I mean, not NRCS, open space.
Do you have a timeline of when you'd like any feedback by for that?
This one within the next couple of months.
Okay.
If there's anything that you can get to us, that'd be great. The Open Space Committee works slowly. They meet frequently, you know, it's been an interesting committee because for years, nothing much happened. So, you know, we're trying to get some guidelines here, management guidelines. So it's not, you know, it's not left just to, you know, whoever happens to be that day going about their business. It'd be nice to have some goals for these properties. So yeah, Andrew, do you think you'd be able to find anything, or?
I'm not sure, honestly. I did skim it over before the meeting and nothing jumped to mind. Like I don't have any,
Yeah.
super helpful feedback right now. I'm just thinking,
But if you do, that
if I
would-
give it a closer read through, maybe scan the literature briefly on what other people are doing, maybe I'll have something useful. to
that would be
say,
lovely.
but
That'd be great.
I don't right now.
No, not right now, but thank you. And I see you've got do you have the Newtown up? I mean, or is that on mine?
Yeah, that's not yours, Marjorie.
I'm gonna put mine down. There it is. All right. So the other thing that the open spaces, or I've submitted to open space, is the Newtown, and I forget there was another town, came up with a policy guideline for their town that they would be planting in the future native plants. 100% native trees, 100% native shrubs, 75%, or is it 75% native shrubs? And then, or 75% perennials, and it doesn't matter about the annuals, they're annuals. So this seemed like a good thing. A lot of times we have trees that are planted that are not native, trees that will last for maybe 100 years or more. They would be having more impact than any signage we'd have in town, but they get more review. The signage gets more review than the planting of the trees. So these guys have, you know, major impacts. And I thought it was a worthwhile thing that Newtown did. It was able to pass by their town, and it gives guidance to the town saying if we're going to plant something. And I know this is in our POCD, but this gives a little bit more specific guidelines to town, and if it's in there, then it would like to get it into the POCD as well, so that, you know, going forward, we're not planting Siberian spruce or Japanese, you know, whatever. Those are lovely plants, but, you know, they don't function ecologically well in town. So we have beautiful plants, so we should, you know, and they do give us a sense of space. So does anyone have any objections to putting this forward? Would you like to see that? I mean, I know we talk about native plants in our thing, but this is just something that would require the town to do it as well.
Yeah, so Marjorie, as I read this, it does seem to suggest that that Newtown is also considering applying it to their ordinances as well, whether as part of the landscaping requirements in the zoning ordinance, but does appear that there's at least some suggestion that it would be required as part of development activity, for instance.
And I think that I personally would like to see it go that way. When you have new applications, I know when we have applications, we do recommend that people put in those things. So spelling it out would, I think, make it easier for the applicants. And a lot of the applicants have been reading our decisions, and they usually come in with a nice native planting scheme anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of our applicants do come in and already have a pretty good plan. And if they don't, and we ask, they're pretty amenable to it. But I think just for putting kind of the recommendations in like an official thing, I think this looks pretty decent. That's all I have.
All right. Does anyone have any objections to this?
Well, I have a few concerns, which is as you're doing this, as sort of time goes on and you find that the climate's changing, are you going to end up constraining us a little bit? Like, I would be very interested in knowing what a native tree is versus a non-native tree. Is like an elm considered native or not?
Yeah, I mean, the native tree species have a wide range. So
Okay.
it's, this is not saying that it has to be only for Connecticut. A lot of them are, throughout the Northeast or, mid-Atlantic. But we're just saying nothing from across the ocean, from similar climate habitats in other parts of the world. So we're not saying.
Is a European beach would be no then?
That would be a no.
So I think. So I have some concerns. I generally have some concerns when you have something like this and say this is a guideline, which is great, but there should be some sort of review policies, et cetera, for variances. I think there also has to be a description about how you decide whether something's native or not. So, when you go from a guideline to something that you really want people to stick to, and you see this enforcement thing at the bottom, then you have to have some way of making sure that everyone agrees on what's native or not native.
Okay, well, there are some loose definitions out there that we could look to put in. That's a good idea. Usually it's something that's been here for thousands of years, at least 1,000 years, because things do migrate around. We have had climate change. Climate's always changing, so things always do move around. But it's mainly the importation of foreign plants. It's plants from
right. I'm not disagreeing with the sentiment.
No.
I'm thinking about how do you make it easy for people in the town, 5-10 years from now to comply. When there's a question about if something is, let's say they want to put a dwarf something in, which isn't native, but is a cultivar of something that was put in, is that okay?
Yeah.
If it's coming from Oregon and it's a native and it's a dwarf version of something, would that work?
Yeah, if it's coming from Oregon, it's not native.
I can imagine a variety of different, I don't know how you deal with like different apple trees, things like that. So you have to, you're kind of, I agree with the general premise of this, but since there's so many specialty nurseries in different areas that do different things, when is it a native and when isn't it?
That's a good point, particularly on the fruit trees. Because we just planted a bunch of fruit trees. And maybe there should be an exemption for at least common fruit trees. If there's like an invasive fruit, obviously we don't want that. But apples, peaches, nectarines. I don't know, are peaches and nectarines actually native?
No, but they are food plants. So it's a good point. If it's a food plant, but then there's things like calorie pears, which are a highly invasive species.
Right.
And it says pear, but it doesn't make a pear. But the seed is highly, spread easily by birds, and that's definitely not. But that would be on the list of invasive plants to avoid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We should have a list of things. Do not plant this at all.
Yeah, and I think there should be a section, exempting, fruit trees.
Yeah.
From the requirement. If someone wants to plant, peach and nectarine trees, I don't think
that's not a problem. Yeah. That's agriculture exemption.
I'm not sure that the exemption is necessarily the only way you want to go. You want to have some sort of review process. You can't think of every option that you're going to have to cover.
No. So the review process would be that for every application of the review. Certainly this doesn't cover the homeowner.
No, but it seems to me, this is always the problem we walk when we're trying to go from a suggestion to an action item.
Yeah.
Right. And you're about to put something in that the town is going, if you pass it, the town's going to have to live with.
Yeah. How about if, I mean, George, if you could point out where it's encouraging other people to do this, but if we could make it an encouragement for other people to plant natives, but for the town itself to plant native, I mean, it'd be a policy guideline for the town to plant, and then an encouragement for other people to plant natives. That's really where I was hoping to go.
Well, right, but I would say that even when you're telling the town that you should encourage them, there should be a goal, but I think if you don't provide some way of discussion of this for specialized systems and a method for that, it can make it hard to execute a few years from now.
It says something about crops at the top. Yeah.
Well, and you certainly do include in this draft, not percentages at 100%. So maybe those exemptions could just simply be included in the 15% as guidance. But I get Charlie's point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's obviously always easier to write kind of guidelines, but right when you take that step to requiring as part of your landscape ordinance in your zoning regulations, again, that usually lists are great. I mean, you want a list of invasive and a list of, well, you can't list all the native plants, but you certainly can list the invasives.
Well, you can't list all the invasives either. They're constantly changing.
Right.
I mean, all you'd have to do is, if you go under the enforcement section, is just say something like deviations from this policy should be forwarded to the town manager or the open space committee, et cetera.
That's a good point.
And then you've given people a way out. If they want to go argue a case that some leading, that there's some reason that we can't think of as to why we should plant a European beech, and it's not a hazard or something, then maybe we decide as a group at that point in time it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So under enforcement.
Yeah. So I would make one suggestion here. Again, is if this is intended as a policy guideline, then I would remove the word enforcement and put something a little bit different in there.
Okay.
Right.
Enforcement truly begets an ordinance or a requirement.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe like remediation? Is that little?
Variance?
Alternative.
Yeah. I mean, it all boils down to what you're trying to do, Marjorie. If you're trying to make guidelines, it's easy.
Right.
It's
but once you're trying to hold the town's feet to the fire, it's another step.
No, I want it to be a guideline. I want that the town will adopt, that gives guidance to the people when they're going out and buying a plant, that the town wants them to buy native plants. Because right now, a lot of the plants that are selected is someone is sent to Home Depot to come up with 6 shrubs.
So if it's a guideline, I don't see any problems with it at all.
Yeah. All right. I agree with you about enforcement. Should be, what would we use instead of enforcement? I mean, this is all taken from Newtown, so,
I would just get rid of the enforcement.
Okay, do we want anything about, if...
Or do you mean like administration?
Yeah.
Right, because you're talking about implementing, administering, etc. So...
Administration, okay.
Yeah, under trees, it says existing trees, non-invasive trees must be removed or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that mean some town guy's going to come with a chainsaw and start cutting my trees down that I didn't even know were invasive? You know what I mean?
No, they're not on they're on town property.
Yeah, but if it's town close to somebody's property, I think Mark, you have to decide whether it's going to be guidelines, and if you're looking for information, it could go to the town manager or the open space committee. Or if you're really trying to hold the town to doing something, then it's a slightly different take on the language.
These are guidelines for the town when they're purchasing and managing their plants.
Okay. That there should not be an enforcement section.
Yeah, we'll take that out.
Yeah, like that thing it says, existing invasive tree species on the Connecticut invasive list will require removal. Well,
yeah, that should go.
That's like that's a hard and fast thing.
That's what I was trying to say before, Marjorie, is that the tone of this was, taken with what appeared to be more of an ordinance approach than
Okay.
and less of a guideline approach.
So we'll change it. This is, yeah.
That's just some language.
Yeah.
changes, yeah.
Exactly. It's just language.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
Okay.
not a.
Well, but it does matter. If,
Yeah.
if,
Oh,
if
yes,
you're
definitely.
if you're trying to promulgate a bunch of different sets of guidelines, you don't, I think, which makes a lot of sense to me for all the reasons we've said.
Yeah.
Having one of them that turns out to be a policy, I think will hurt us long term in terms of getting people to accept them going through.
Okay, so we'll go with guideline. Is that what it's, I can't read here. That's something else up there. But those are great points. This hasn't been discussed by open space yet in its full committee. So this tweaking this now makes a big difference, and this is very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was neat that some of the towns are doing this. It's something we need in town, but these are helpful changes, and so we'll tweak them and we'll bring them back so we can look at them again. All right, those were the things I think I sent George, and then I think I sent. We talked about the invasive species, and talked about our website and getting things up on the website. I know we talked about coming up with the top list of 5 invasives. Have you all thought of your favorite 5 invasives?
Garlic mustard.
That's so easy to pull.
Well, I was actually, so as I looked at what was happening on the Stratton Brook Trail, which I was going to bring up, poison ivy, is that listed as an invasive or just a noxious weed?
So it's noxious, but it's native.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was actually the question I was, I was looking at that, and I know, and I don't want to sidetrack, so I'll bring that up later. I don't want to sidetrack that discussion. So poison ivy is not an invasive, therefore we're not going to put it under the invasive weed area.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I hate Japanese knotweed, so it's just to get rid of it. It looks nice, but it takes over everything.
Everything. Yeah, and it is so hard to kill. But as far as people's yards, I thought Japanese barberry, burning bush, autumn olive, multiflora rose, and oriental bittersweet were pretty obnoxious things.
Well,
it's always on everyone's top list, right? All those things.
Yeah, if we only wanted 5, we could go on.
well, one thing I have to cut it down like soon because it's starting to take over again, But when I was a kid, I grew up here, and in the mid 70s, they sent every kid home one day with a sapling of a Russian olive.
Yes.
And those things grow fast.
Yeah.
And I have one, it's in bloom, it stinks. Actually, the pollen is so,
Beet.
heavy, it's almost like nauseating. But, it's in my yard, I got to cut it down, but it started growing in the back too, where I dump all my, yard debris and stuff like that. I have no idea how it got there, but all of a sudden it's like, wow, this thing is already 4 feet high.
Yeah. There's a great little book, and I thought we could link on our website to this. This is, and it's got more than 5, but it's got nice little pages on each plant, identification pages and how to treat it, and also different controls. But it also says native alternatives down there in the corner. I thought rather than coming up with something else, this would be easy, quick, and available to put on our website right off the bat.
I should get a copy of that. Find out what other.
You can get it, I think you can get it on. I think there's a website link.
So I forwarded the 2 links you gave me to everybody, so it should be in your mailbox. I did that today. The invasive plants in your backyard, and then Marjorie, I could not open the Connecticut Native Plant
Oh,
Sustainable
That
Landscaping.
that one's tricky. I'll send that one to you again. But this is the Connecticut invasive plant. This is out of Yukon. And the lovely thing about it, it tells you, I mean, it's a big, it's hard to print this one off. It's all in color, but it does give you, here's native plants for garden beds, and here's another one low growing for ground cover. So it's one sheet per, thing that somebody, because it's really hard to come up with, here's, the several plants that you can put in your yard. I mean, there's so many different plants and different uses. So I thought this was a very reasonable thing, but it was good. But I'll see if I can send you the link that does work. I know I've had troubles opening it, but I'll send that link again.
Okay. But I don't think there's any the reason we can't get those up on the website.
Okay.
In a matter of days.
Yeah, on that invasive plants, the Russian olive was not on that list.
Yeah.
Oh, on this one? Oh, I said autumn
Correct.
olive. In my list, it was on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
An autumn olive. Okay.
Autumn olive, Russian olive, same. Yeah.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to figure out what I'm going to plant in the place of the one burning bush I have left. It's my goal to get rid of it before it goes to seed again this year. I was told I have to put something in its place, and I don't know what I want to put there.
There's some nice plants. Viburnum nudum winterthur.
I want to plant like a hardy herb like thyme.
Like thyme?
Yeah,
Well,
I don't know. That's I just want to replace everything with like stuff I'll use.
there you go. There you go. So if anyone else has any links to anything that you come across, send them in, see what we can. We can get up on our website.
Yeah, we'll do a little link corner.
Yeah.
We can design something like that with IT guys here for
Alright.
sure.
All right. So those are all that I sent in. But those are just my thoughts, but I'd love to hear, what else you might be thinking of or something that should be brought up.
Go ahead, Jason.
Sorry. So I just became aware that it's a thing, and I'm accidentally participating in No Mow May.
Yeah.
West Hartford's kind of making a big deal about it. I haven't mowed since the end of April, half because my lawnmower, I'm waiting for new blades. But also I kind of like that it's a thing. And I know it's probably kind of late to make a big deal about it this year, but
Next year.
maybe next year we can look at promoting it, because it ties in with the pollinator pathway really well.
Yeah.
My wife thinks that I'm just using it as an excuse, which may be a little bit, but it is beneficial, I think.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, when people don't mow early in the year, you get a ton of cool looking flowers that just show up in people's yards.
Yeah. If you're not treating the lawn, you can get things. I was following No Mow May, but then my yard has become infested with bittercress, which is a new invasive. And it sends up seeds this time of the year. So if you don't mow, then the seeds form and spread more. So I'm sort of rethinking No Mow May temporarily until I get the bittercress under control. So, but it would have to be.
We've got a neighbor down the street from us who's doing that, and my wife wanted to know what happens in June.
Well,
How do I get that cut in June?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. We're having a birthday party next weekend.
I don't really have that big a tractor.
yeah. Yeah, it can get problematic. We get a lot of rain and things grow really well.
Yeah.
It'd be scything June. I mean, it would be, or tractor June. It would be tough. But the idea is sort of, if you can mow around some of the flowers, some of the violets, because they do support some of the pollinators. So, anyone else has any other? Charlie, you had something.
Well, so I had a general question, because I was walking down the Stratton Brook Trail the other day, which is where the part where they had to sort of put in a new road to get to the Aquarian water site that they're redoing it. And as part of their work, they kind of really did a number on both sides of the road. And so they decided to replant some stuff on one side. The other side is now completely full of garlic mustard and poison ivy. and it's now into the trail. So the question, I had a kind of a general policy question, which is when this was going in, and they knew they had to do this. What was the remediation plan going to be, given they had to disturb that much soil? And now who's responsible for cleaning that up? Because it's all going down into Stratton Brook. It's going to completely fill that area. The garlic mustard's out of control, and the whole thing is now full of poison ivy. So who has the responsibility, given that, you know, Aquarian had to go put this road in to do that stuff, but now we've got a mess on a major trail?
Yeah, and it's right next to the brook. That's a good point. I know it came before us. What were our recommendations in there? And, you know, it'd be lovely if they used a conservation seed mix rather than, you know, turf grass seed or anything like that.
They aren't using anything like that. They've planted on one side. They've planted some rhododendrons and a couple, and I'll bet you that they're not your native little
rhododendrons.
And that's on one side, and the other side they didn't do anything, and
Is that the
it's going
stream
right down
side?
to the stream.
Is that the stream
Side.
That doesn't sound right.
No, I would, Marjorie. I think you would not have a good time if you're walking down this trail.
No.
And it's obviously it's now a big, you know, kind of it's a big kind of crushed stone system, but the poison ivy is now into the crushed stone and is right up next to the trail. And it's going all over the place.
So then they'll probably use a glyphosate or something that, you know, they'd have to use one that was suitable next to the stream. So George, could you look and see what there was an application for this project, and see what, you know, what stabilization was supposed to be happening afterwards.
Well, or even if they had a great plan,
Yeah.
the fact that it's going completely south,
Yeah.
what are we going to do about it? Because if we wait 2 or 3 years, it's going to be really miserable in a major area that's used by a lot of town people.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pull that file and take a look at it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can discuss it and see what happens. Hopefully we suggested some sort of a conservation seed mix or stabilization of the soil. Not shame on us.
I don't think that they were listening to you at all if you suggested it.
Well, you know, that's the thing. It's you know, they're often suggestions. So, all right, but yeah, that's you know, garlic mustard, poison ivy is a native plant. It would stabilize that slope, but it's kind of hard for the trail users. Actually, 40 different animals use poison ivy. They eat the leaves or the berries or things like that. So
well, then we may have an answer to turn that whole thing into a poison ivy bank, which is what it's going to be in a year.
it will. Eventually, the bittersweet will start growing.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah. So we'll take a look at that and see what we can do about that at our next meeting.
Okay.
All right. Good. Thank you. All right. Does anyone have anything now? Or do they want to just not hear me talking anymore about these things? Something going on and on. So yeah. So you know, anytime you think something that we should be adding to our website, you know, run it by and, you know, send it in. Well, you know, because there's things that we can. I think one time we did have something, or I had sent something in about bears. You know, people how to manage their backyards with bears. We did have something about bird feeders, but I'm not sure if those links ever got up.
The bird feeder's up.
Oh, the bird feeder's up.
I was looking at it today, thinking about where we would add stuff to it. So yeah,
Okay.
the bird feeder education is still up.
And I think we need one about people with bears. If someone wants to.
I agree, especially after what happened in Newtown earlier this week.
What happened in Newtown?
Somebody shot a bear and killed it that was in their chicken coop, and it orphaned 2 cubs, and people are understandably angry. But again, it was a bear that was habituated to humans, which we have plenty of those in town.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, it's only a matter of time before either a bear seriously injures or kills somebody here, or somebody seriously injures or kills a bear here for attacking their animal.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, people need to be better about not attracting bears and not habituating them to people because these problems are only going to get more and more frequent.
Yeah.
And I'd prefer our town to not be the next one on the news and have everybody angry on both sides at us.
So we need more information about how to not habituate bears. That only we can prevent nuisance bears.
Yeah.
A
Smokey would say.
a couple years ago, I went to that conference in downstate somewhere, and they had a woman that, or someone from UConn talking about bears, and there was a link or some website, and I cannot remember it for the life of me.
Yeah.
But it's like a black bear guide,
Yeah.
basically. I can't remember where it was.
The biggest problem is you have a lot of people that believe what they want to believe, and they don't listen to anything outside of that. Everybody thinks these bears, they're cute, cuddly, they're no threat, they're no danger, which most of the time they're not, agree, but they can be. And the more comfortable they get with people, the more problems they're going to be. And I mean, personally, I think it needs to be addressed more on the state level from DEP to try and re-educate people. But I mean, if there's something we can do, at least in our little corner.
I think DEEP does it and the local organizations do it, but I think it should be on every level we possibly can. So
Yeah, if you go to the DEEP website, they have a page, Living with Black Bears, that talks about a lot of this stuff. There's like where you can report your sightings, frequently asked questions, how to be bear aware. There's a video on the sorts of things we're talking about to not habituate them, a do's and don'ts list, all that kind of stuff. I tried to link to it, but I don't see like a chat feature here. But it's Living with Black Bears is the name of the page.
Yeah, the problem with that, though, is the people who are spreading falsehoods are a lot louder than DEEP right now. And they're honestly the loudest voices in the room. I mean, if you go on any of the news articles on Facebook and read the comment section about, I mean, there's just like ludicrous things like there's people like, oh, the state should leave food out in the woods with birth control if they want to address the bear population. I'm like I don't even know what to say to that. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of bad info floating around, and it's going to cause problems. It's already causing problems, and it's only going to make things worse.
Yeah, I'm just saying if we need something to link, that would be a good place to start.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It looks really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if someone's not going to go to the DEEP website, but somehow they happen to be on ours, which is, I don't know how likely that is, but at least we could have it there so they could link to it. So they don't have to search. They don't have to type it into Google and find it for themselves.
And if you encounter people who love seeing the bear right outside their window, maybe talk to them about why that bear's there and what they can do to maybe discourage that. I don't know.
So the more information we get out, I know Simsbury Land Trust is going to do an article about bears, and we've
Good.
done it before. We'll do it again, but these are ongoing issues that we just need to.
Yeah.
The more people, it can be newspaper. There are always newspaper articles and things like that, but the more it gets out, the more chance that someone will see it. So good. All right. So no Mow and Living with Black Bears, and we've got the bird feeders up. So we'll get a list of things up on our website. All right. Anything else? I think that's enough for tonight. And thank you, George. And we'll look forward to seeing you all on the 7th, 6th? 6th. All right, that's our next meeting.
You want to, I don't know if we had that final discussion about continue on Zoom or?
Well, we don't have, I think we had the discussion at the last meeting. We don't have a live applicant.
Okay, that's right.
Continue. Zoom is easy. And then
we do have a live applicant.
We will have a live applicant.
we will have, so we'll be in person.
Okay, so we'll do it in person.
All right, we'll meet.
I look forward to seeing you all.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
excellent. That'll be fun.
All right. So thank you very much. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And we have a second from Charlie. All in favor?